Welcome to the latest episode of Property Ponderings. I'm your host, Craig Nicol, buyer's agent at Nicol Buyer Advisory in the inner north of Melbourne, Australia. And today we're going to be talking about 7 common buyer mistakes that I have seen over my journey. I was a sales agent for over 10 years, so I did see a lot of mistakes made. And of course, they're easy to make, so I hold nothing against the buyers themselves. It's easy to do that, but today I wanted to outline those mistakes that I saw commonly to make sure that you, as a buyer that's coming into the market soon, to make sure that you don't do the same thing. Over that journey, you do see a lot of people making good purchases as well and making good decisions, but unfortunately, there are those people that for whatever reason, weren't able to get it all together when they did purchase, and it does certainly impact your future wealth and ability to move around. If you've got the wrong property, it's definitely hard to sell later on, or it might not go up in price like you had imagined, or maybe you've got difficult tenants because it's in the wrong area, or there's a lot of different issues. And as you hear these common mistakes that I did see a lot, you will get to understand why they can be so consequential for your future and your property portfolio. So let's get into it. They lack the confidence to be able to purchase the right property when it comes up. So there are many occasions when a person would come through a property and it would tick all of their boxes. It would be in the right location, be within their budget, and have all the niceties in the house that they were after, have all the things within the house that they were after, nice open plan living space or a courtyard for the dog or whatever it was that they were looking for, but they just didn't have the confidence to place an offer and purchase. So the common reasons would be that they only just entered the market, and they weren't quite sure what price would be fair or if it was a good buy, or and of course there's times where people would go in and see the first property that they inspected and they would like it, and more often than not they didn't have the confidence to buy it. So it's it can be difficult. If you're coming into the market and you're looking at one property, you don't have a good glimpse of everything else that's there. All I can say is that to try and fix this or not get yourself in this situation is to inspect more properties as quickly as possible to get a feel for the market, do more research, get things moving quicker. Often people are coming into the market and they are, they're like, oh, look, let's just research the market for a few months. It's almost like they've penciled it in the diary to not buy in the first 3 months or 6 months. And so what happens? You go through properties in the early days and you might like them and you might absolutely love them. And then you don't do anything because, your plan was to just research. And so, you didn't have the confidence to then strike and buy that property when it was there. And then 6 months down the track, you're still looking for that same one and you missed out on it. So the only way I can see that you can fix this issue and not make this mistake is by knowing sooner that it is something that is unique. It is something that is special that you need to jump on straight away. I always tell people they shouldn't be scared to purchase the first, second or third property that they see if it ticks all their boxes. Like, it's about being prepared with the criteria and then meeting those guidelines so that you can purchase. It's not about a numbers game where you see as many as possible and then you have to buy the 100th one, or other criteria. The criteria is that you've got a goal to buy a certain type of property, and if it comes up, you need to be able to buy it. And that's why not having the confidence to is such a shame. So let's inspect more properties quicker. Let's get all the wheels in motion quicker so that you are ready to strike and you have the confidence to as well. Sometimes building up confidence as well can be just about getting involved with the process more. Talk to agents more, go to more auctions, be a part of online Zoom or boardroom auctions. Get in there and get amongst it so you can see what's happening, because it'll give you the confidence to act. And of course, the people or the demographic that are hurt by this mistake the most are first home buyers. Of course, they're buying their first property, so they are lacking the confidence because they haven't done it before, and it's a big purchase. All of these things are completely fair enough, but you need to try and overcome these hurdles that may cause you to make mistakes by missing out on really good properties. So that's mistake number one that I saw. And the big issue, to be clear, with mistake number one is that you could miss out on a property that perfectly suited your criteria, and then you may not find it again. And that's for investment or for a home buyer. That's the problem. But it also means that in, for example, a rising market, that you go through a number of properties, and that time you're taking to build up confidence is watching the market go up 10-15% in a matter of a few months, just because you didn't have the confidence to act early enough. So that's where that mistake is a mistake. That's why it is a mistake, because it's hurting you into the future with these with this lack of decision, is causing you to potentially pay more and lose money if you look at it like that, or it's causing you to miss out on the property that you really wanted. Buyer mistake number two, which I always saw, was listening to the wrong people. Now, the most common people that we speak to, or that I see people speak to about property purchases, especially for younger first home buyers, and a lot of the conversation we're having today will circle around first home buyers in some way, because they're the ones more likely to make a mistake early on. If you've already bought one property or you've bought your second, you're less likely to make a mistake because you've already had a crack and and you've made some mistakes and you've learnt and you've had some experience, right? So that's why a lot of the conversation today may circle around first home buyers, but certainly these mistakes can be made by anyone. So number two, it was listening to the wrong people. So if we're talking about first home buyers, it's commonly the parents that they're talking to. And the really difficult one, which I can see why it comes up, is that parents with a big home come through to look at properties with their kids, and the kids are buying properties in the similar areas, but the houses are tiny compared to their big home. So, there's a new townhouse project, and the parents are coming through and saying the living spaces are tiny, the courtyard's tiny, everything's tiny. But it's, in reality, this is what you're getting these days. These are the projects that are being built, and this may be what is within their price range at the time. So, sometimes this will force these buyers to not look at those properties or to think negatively about those properties, even though it may actually have quite a big living space, or the fact it has a courtyard is rare compared to other properties, or that this one is actually particularly good quality for a new build compared to a lot of other ones which might be junk. So there's opportunities, and certainly over the years that I saw, where people would listen to their parents and their friends and family and whoever else is there that they respect and want to receive advice from, where they've been talked out of something. This can also occur as well when you're looking at investors. Investors talk to people and they follow podcasts like this and talk about hotspotting and all this sort of stuff, and they're looking in different areas. So they may go through a property in a location and go, oh, this is great value, I can see things going really well, then talk to their friends and then or listen to the podcast and go, oh no, okay, well, maybe this area doesn't have a great name, or maybe this isn't happening, or which is all fair enough, but you have to make sure that you're getting advice from the right people. Often we saw people just anecdotally listening to their friends' anecdotal stories about a certain location, or just a bunch of things that were irrelevant, that were just basically made up and gossip, and not listen or look at the actual data that the area was going up in value, or sites were getting developed and things were changing. That's certainly in gentrifying areas But this could refer to any property. It's more about the fact that the mistake is being made when you're listening to people that may not know what they're talking about. And of course, I know that there are a lot of people, and parents included, that do know a lot about property. So this is not a blanket rule, of course. A lot of people, a lot of parents and friends and family know about property, but it's often the people that unfortunately listen to people that don't know a lot about property that are getting hurt the most. And like the flip side, I saw this all the time where someone will be looking at a wonderful property, great block size in a great location, be on a side street, and really good value for whatever point in the market. I could think of countless examples, and ultimately they did perform really well, but people got talked out of them by friends. And they told them to buy in areas that were that I just couldn't believe what I was hearing, and they listened to them. And unfortunately, these people would have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars by listening to their friends. It is like, this is a very costly mistake that people make, and it's certainly it's not a trivial one. If you unfortunately have friends that don't know much about property. There's a bit of a danger as well with this, where you talk to friends who have had a certain experience as well with property, thinking that their one experience is what everyone that deals with property is going to have. It might be they bought an unrenovated home, and when they did it, they lost all this money because they didn't know about a problem that was in the house or whatever, and so they're completely against renovations. And so you hear this all the time, and then they talk to you about it, and they go, "Oh, absolutely do not go through a renovation process. This is what happened," and whatever. And this could have been just an anomaly. They had a bad builder, or they got some bad advice at some point in time, and things didn't go well, or sometimes things like that happen. It shouldn't be a blanket rule for them to then pass on to you. So you have to understand that you're looking at the bigger picture when you're taking all this advice on board. Let's think about things a little bit more critically about what's accurate, what's the probability of this occurring again. Like get some education around that, so you're not saying no to a property or yes to a property purely based on one person's anecdotal experience about how much money they made or lost. And so you can see where talking to friends and family and getting the wrong advice at the wrong time can be really costly. So that is common mistake number 2. Common buyer mistake number 3 is that buyers get to a stage where they're just sick of looking, and they buy whatever they see that ticks most of their boxes, or they pay way too much. So if you're in this situation where you've been looking for a while, stock levels, especially in Melbourne, have been quite low now for a number of years, and you can't find what you want, then don't just buy a compromised property. Have to stay patient and think through things rationally, and make sure things are still meeting your criteria, or at least if you've had to adjust your plan because prices have moved, then make sure that you are resetting that criteria, and then you're still meeting something. Because I can tell you the amount of times that people have been looking for a while, they just get sick of it, and they keep missing out on properties. This, of course, can happen in hotter markets. They just keep missing out, and then they just jump at something, and they jump at the wrong thing. They put in a big offer on something because they're sick of it, or they jump at a busy main road property, or something that they didn't really want, and they just take it because they're sick of it. Life's busy, there's other things going on, and I can see why it happens, but it can be a massive mistake. If you're feeling that way, then just take a breath and just stop and just reset what's going on, because ultimately, you've still got your place to live in. Understand sometimes you've sold a place, and then you've got to find something to move into, or you're getting kicked out of your rental and you need to find something. There's different deadlines. You have to work out different backup plans, because it's better to stay in an Airbnb for a few weeks, or at your parents' house, or at your brother's house, or at a friend's house, whatever it is. It's better to make some short-term complicated and more more difficult arrangements, or uncomfortable, should I say, and take that on the chin rather than the mistakes that can be made if you purchase the wrong property. We're dealing in completely different magnitudes of risk. You're paying a few $1,000s to rent something else or stay at a friend's house, but we're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of mistake if you go and just latch on to the first thing that you see. So I hope that one's very clear for you. Mistake number 4, a poor inspection of the property. And I use that generally. I mean, maybe there's a lack of a building and pest inspection. Maybe you've just gone through the property and had a very quick look. That is probably the most common one. We get people that are looking at properties, they come through for an inspection and they literally look at it for 5 minutes and then they're ready to place an offer. And it is, it's pretty amazing that happens. And then you shouldn't be surprised if suddenly there are issues with the build or there's some sort of problem with the property that you couldn't see straight away. It requires more time and thought than what some people put in. Now, I understand a lot of people, they come through properties and they look multiple times and they're doing their due diligence, and that's great. And I certainly have narrowed in on a certain stereotype of person that does that over the years, and they're very detail oriented, and that's great. They won't be letting anything slip past them. But for those of you that are a little bit more loose and come and view a property and don't put in the time and effort to look around, again, do not be surprised if there are issues with the property. And this also includes not just the property, but issues with maybe the contract, if you haven't had that reviewed and haven't put much time and thought into that, or the local area. You've purchased something that's about to be next to an enormous apartment building or something untoward. So you have to make sure that you are doing your due diligence and inspecting the property and everything attached to it or relevant to it in the right amount of time. I guess with that point as well, the building and pest side of things, I know that when you're looking at lots of properties, that if you do have to fork out for $600, $700, $800, maybe $1,000 to do the building and pest inspection, that can be very costly when you're going through a lot of different properties. My advice, and for the clients that I have as well, we do building and pest inspections on all properties that we're looking at seriously, unless they're going to knock the property down. But if it's a house that they're planning to live in, and they need to a certain standard, is certainly what is needed. It's what's required. Even if you do know that a house needs a bit of work, that you know what you're getting yourself into. And on the flip side, if it's a brand new property, you know what things you need to maybe look out for maintenance-wise moving forward as well. So it just gives you more information, and the fact that it is $1,000, is really annoying. But I think that the risk mitigation there is well worth it, and I don't think it's something that anyone can compromise on unless you are a building inspector or a builder yourself that maybe has the information or the the skills to be able to assess that for yourself. Common mistake number 5 was buyers trying to negotiate on a property when they already had a really good price on the table from the owner as a potential counteroffer. Now, I understand what people might say and go, oh, yeah, of course you say that. As a sales agent, you're always trying to get the most, the highest price possible and, blah, blah. But the reality is there are often times, especially in bad markets, most often in bad markets, people would have a property available to them. They were lucky enough to be looking when the market was flat, whether that was by their own doing and planning, which is good on them, or whether it was just happenstance. But they would be in this situation where they would have negotiated a large percentage off the price because the owners, for whatever reason, may needed to sell, and there was some motivation there to get rid of it. And buyers would have genuinely amazing offers in front of them, and they would still try and negotiate. And there were times where they would just completely miss out on the property. I have no doubt that they would be kicking themselves for trying to continue to negotiate when you have a good deal on the table. There's always a balance here. I appreciate, and I do it myself, where you negotiate on properties. That is essential. But when you have a good deal, and you know you have a good deal based upon the knowledge that you've built up, don't be pushing it so far that you miss out on the property and a wonderful deal because you are trying to pull things too far. It is, it's easy to do. It's human nature, but just pull yourself up and understand that, you have a goal, and if you're exceeding expectations of your goal, that's great. But if you just keep going and going and going, you're working against yourself. So you have to pull the trigger at some stage, and you understand that you're playing a game, potentially with the way you're negotiating, but it's not always the way things go. I know there's a lot of people, especially investor types, that over the years they will just put in lots of really low offers on properties, and they'll go around to different agents, and then one eventually will bite. They say, you put in 100 or you put in 200 offers, and one person will take a really low offer, and that's great. That's how the system works. But I often found with people like that, they were tending to put in offers on good properties, and I'd be selling a good property and they would never buy it, and then I'd hear that they bought something and would see that it wasn't a very good property. So there's normally reasons. I know everyone hears these stories where people are putting in lots of low ball offers and they keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and they negotiate this great deal. But unless you get really, really lucky, you're really up against it, and often just wasting your time and missing out on a really good opportunity that was sitting in front of you at a great deal. So this is especially the case when you're buying good properties. If you're buying poor properties and they've got all these downsides, then go and negotiate, and you probably negotiate them down to a very low price, because that's what they're worth. So just be wary of making that mistake. Okay, common mistake number 6, which is relevant to the last point as well, is the way that you treat agents. I saw a common mistake where people would become quite confrontational or adversarial from the start, and didn't really want to talk to the sales agent or didn't want to engage with them at all, which is understandable. There's some good blokes and bad blokes out there, just like any other industry and any other part of society. But if you're trying to buy a property, you're there and you're having to deal with that person for that property, and it's not going to help if there is conflict or hostility there that is making things worse, putting tensions there. A lot of agents have ego, and it won't be a surprise, and if you're butting up against that, they'll try not to sell you the property if it can help it. Think about it. The reality is I saw lots of situations where there were agents that were dealing with people they didn't want to deal with, and they would do their darndest to try and sell it to someone else. That's the reality. Still trying to get the highest price, but giving other people more time maybe to put in a higher offer, or pushing them harder to put a higher offer in. These are people that you're dealing with, and so you should be being nice to them, creating an environment where it's much easier to negotiate rather than something that's too tense, and then everyone's sort of on the edge and not having a good time. No one's enjoying it. No one really wants to get the deal done, and so that's not a great place to be. I know that the real estate world, you can see things as a bit of a game, and play hard to get. Don't call the agent back, or treat them sort of mean and keep them keen, as they used to say. It's something that it isn't helping. It isn't helping. I know that you can negotiate and you can be a firm negotiator. That's fine, but you don't have to be a dickhead. So there are different ways to do it. So the main point here in the mistake is that people are playing this game, and they are whether it's a game or whether they just don't like the agent. It's not helping. So you have to be there. You have to be open with them. Have a chat with them. It doesn't help to not answer their questions. I know that they ask probing questions. You don't have to answer all their questions, but I mean the basic questions that they're asking. They're trying to do their job to provide feedback for the owners. Give them something to work with. Don't play this game where you're trying to hide things, because I think it works against you, and I've always seen it from both sides. So when I'm buying properties, talking to agents like you would anyone else, and creating friendships with them, because they can help you to find new properties, get you indoors. And I know with a number of properties off market for myself, or for clients. They've come through agents that I'm mates with, and that I've tried to be nice to and create a friendship with. You don't get along with every single agent in the world the same. Everyone's a bit different, but that's the way that it is. If you are a buyer, you're out there to try and purchase a property, and they can help you do that. So you need them on your side. And if you don't, well, it makes things more difficult. Of course, you can still do it, but when push comes to shove, it's making things harder for you to get the outcome that you want. And often you have to look past this one transaction, right? You're buying one property, but later you might need another one, and you might need their help. Or you might need their help to sell your property later on. Let's just think of the bigger picture and making sure that we're not trying to play games with the agents. We're creating some friendships, and we're looking at things in more of a convivial manner instead of trying to create that adversarial vibes. I hope that point is clear. No, this isn't everyone, obviously. I'm saying that, but this was a common mistake that I saw, where people were making things harder than they needed to be with agents. For myself, you were, trying to be upfront and explain situations, but there's a lot of stigma being a real estate agent. So people would come to opens and have feelings about who you are and what you do, and that would be sort of pushed upon you pretty quickly, and it was easy for us to see what they thought of us, but it was making things then difficult moving forward, because they wouldn't answer questions, or they wouldn't give us the opportunity to answer questions correctly, or tell them how the process would work, and make things easier for the transaction to go through. Speaking, over the years, met people that have purchased properties and developers that purchase properties all the time, and they were always the best to deal with. They know how things work, and whether it was fake or not, they were treating you well and with respect, and that's fine. They knew that you could feed them properties and you could help them. And whether they were trying to get a leg up and hope that we help them in return, that it's a reality of human nature that it would work for them at certain times. Whether the agent was doing it on purpose or subconsciously, they may be trying to help that person. That's just the way that humans work. So if you have someone that is easy to deal with and they're a good person, then you may try and help them a bit more. I think that's the reality of how how life works with any industry. So create that environment where it's easier for them to come to you with a property and go, look, or the property that you've already seen, and go, Craig, look, this is where this is where you need to be for price, or this is how the process is going to work. I'll try and help you as much as I can, instead of creating an environment where they try and tell you things or try and help you, and you don't want to answer their calls, you don't want to talk to them. Whatever it is that you're planning to do to try and potentially help play the game of sort of treating them mean for the process is not great. Number 7, most commonly seen buyer mistake is not having urgency when you're looking to purchase. And I think this is a really costly one. A lot of people come through properties, and as I said at the start, they're looking and they're like, oh, look, I'm going to look for 3 months. I'm going to look for 6 months. Then we're going to start to look to buy. I'm just getting a feel for it. But the urgency isn't there. The property market doesn't wait for you to be ready before they bring all the good properties on. The reality is the market is its own beast. People are making individual decisions in a bigger picture. So when the property comes up that you need to buy, you need to have urgency and you have to be ready to go. So this is like many of the other videos where I've spoken about getting all your ducks lined up, get your finance organized, get through as many properties as quickly as possible, do everything quicker, because you are missing out on opportunities by taking things slow. No one cares if you're not quite ready. If you're not ready because you haven't got your finance ready, or you're still saving up money and there's genuine roadblocks, like that's fine. But if you can do things quicker and get those things organized, then you should. Don't just wait, because the property that you want could come up at the wrong time. So you want to be ready and leave your window open as far as possible. Like, think about it. If you are planning on buying a property this year and you block out the first 3 months to organize finance and just start to look through properties slowly, then you've lost a quarter of the year of new properties, 3 months of the year of new properties, because you're not ready. And that's significant. you're suddenly, if you're ready in January and you push things, you've got, maybe you lose January because you're still preparing, but then you've still got another 11 months there. It's much better than having only 9 months. So, you have to expand, because we're working in markets now where the good properties are far fewer and there's way more poor properties. So it may look like there's thousands of listings on, things are coming, things are happening, but if you actually look at it, there's not that many. So the biggest mistake I think that was really costly for people often was their lack of urgency. So I just want you to get yourself ready and move a bit quicker. Get a firecracker up your backside and do something and move things along if there's no reason for you to be slow and sitting on your hands. And so if the market moves, this can be extremely costly. I saw people that would go through properties and they would just dawdling, like, oh look, yeah, this is great, but we're not quite ready. And I'd be like, oh, why not? What's going on? They're like, oh look, we just got to organize finance. I'm still thinking about this and doing this. And look, there's lots of stuff going on in life, but move things along. If this means something to you, and it also is really important that you get this right, then do something. Build some urgency and make something happen. That proactive nature is going to give you more opportunities. Okay, so that urgency there, just having that urgency to do something and get yourself organized. And that flows through with agents as well. Look, you're talking to, I'm ready to go. I'm doing this. We're moving, like, want to buy, ready to go now if something comes up. And then they'll send you off markets. Talk to more agents. Be more proactive. They'll send you more off markets or new listings they've gotten on. Things will happen. Just, that urgency underlying everything that you're doing is important. Now, of course, it shouldn't be to a level where you're getting really stressed, but just move a bit quicker. A lot of people that we used to see would just be slow. Things were happening slowly, and because there's a big auction market within Melbourne, they just weren't ready for things, and things would pass them by. Opportunities will pass them by. Prices will move up, and they were too slow, and then they're suddenly shopping 2 suburbs further out because of what happens. We're dealing with these major suburbs, major cities where there's hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people that are moving about and wanting to buy into certain areas, and only a few are coming up. So you just cannot be passive. I can tell you there were occasions where we would have a closing offer situation and people, there is normally a close date where you would have to put offers in on properties, and so if things just happened maybe a little bit early and some people were rushed but they were really in love with the property, then suddenly they weren't ready to buy the property and they missed out. Not ready for the auction, they've missed out. That let's get some urgency, let's move so we're ready if something does happen. Don't just plan things like it's a slow pace and things will just happen to work to your schedule. We have to move quicker, and I can't tell you the amount of times that people have told me as they're coming to opens and we talk about different properties, how they weren't quite ready to buy one of the ones that suited, and then the next 6 months we are still talking, trying to find something similar for them. It is so common. So that urgency is really important. That should underlie everything, but we're making those decisions though with clear criteria, and we're educated with what's going on. But underlying all that, we've got a little bit of a firecracker there, just moving us and being ready to act when it's necessary. All right, that's the end of the episode today. Really appreciate you listening, and I hope this has helped you if you're looking to purchase a property. If you want some more information, feel free to reach out. You can jump on our website, www.nickelbuyeradvisory.com.au. I'm Craig. I'll chat to you soon.